guys need one? No, you have a computer, right?
Is there anything for the parents?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get this down here. This should make sense. 2, 3, is 3. Just put this down. Maybe can you do this?
Thank you.
Yes, it's going this way. Can you just put this down and then pass these out as well? Yes. So pass it along here, and is that the one? English, German, Spanish? Yeah, it's just the one page. It's 2018. And this is just 2018.
We need another one that way?
Yeah, okay.
I think it's 2 pages.
No.
First and second
That one
page.
is.
This is a double.
Okay, do we have the-
Sets, basically.
We need 5 pages each. It starts with.
This is third
Oh,
page.
yeah, there you go. Yeah, oh, there's 6, but I do have 3.
Yeah, I don't have the
Biggi.
third.
I only have 2.
I have one right there, here, and then these are, there you go.
So, guys, I'm calling it to order. Call to order at by FB at.
There's 5 pages, then you don't have full.
Please.
5 pages.
So let's make this work. We have a hard stop. We're trying to make a hard stop at 5. And so, meeting called to order at 3:49. We're a little late because we have to print out the right budget. I'm going to do the roll call. Frank Beuthin present. Lucio? Present. Gwenis?
Present.
Biggi?
Present.
So the finance committee has full quorum, so we can move forward as it is a Brown meeting. We also have present Ryan Griffin, and introduce yourself.
Hi, Emerald, County Manager.
Right. We will allow public comment. 30 minutes as it is in the meeting or at the meeting, so we're mindful of it. We'd like to get your opinion.
Yes, I would.
Yeah. So you can make a comment. Usually what happens is we can't respond to it. It's not a working session, but you can comment and we'll take the comment in, but we're not supposed to respond to you and communicate with you in this way, if that makes sense. Meeting will be taped. If you have any reservations, please let them know. Will be taped and posted so that everybody can see that the meeting is conducted within the true sense of the Brown Act. Items for discussion. We don't actually pass a budget here today. We're discussing it with the intention that the board will vote on a budget or two budget proposals. We're not passing judgment here at this stage. It's a working session for the finance committee. So bear in mind that there's no intention to really pass a budget here. It's just to prepare a budget for the board to pass. As such, is the approval of the agenda as presented. I need a motion. You can be on point.
Yes, I make the motion
Gwenis,
to
motion.
approve as presented.
Do I get a second?
I second.
Biggie second, so the motion carries. We are now in the items for discussion number item 4, 2018-2019 budget. So we are looking at 4 documents. 3 documents, right? 3 or 4 documents. 1, it's a staffing plan for the teachers. The staffing plan for the administration. You don't have that? I'm missing that. I need an orange one. An orange one. Is there another orange one for me that I can take out of the orange?
I'll put one together for you.
And the third item is the summary budget, which goes through all the accounting classes by revenue and by expenses.
So Brian, this budget doesn't have executive director.
It is not an executive director yet.
We're in the process of hiring.
Yeah,
Why
because
we voted to hire one?
I know, we're not, it's just to balance the budget.
Well, how are you going to balance the budget if we're already in the middle of hiring one? We're going to bring somebody aboard by the end of the month.
Let's just go through the
No, we're
numbers.
not going to, this was already voted on, we're going to have somebody aboard by the end of the month.
Yeah, so then we put it in.
How can you not, why are we, we have to have it in there.
Lucio, just stay with me for a second. We're gonna go through the process, and you get. All I did was this. This didn't have one in is red. I got it to orange with Ryan. I'm not passing judgment on it. When we put
That's
it
the
in.
most important thing. We took action at the last board meeting. We said we're going to have an executive director interim.
We will put it
And that's
in.
the first thing. It says not advertised as well. How can we move forward with that?
We are not. We're discussing it. This is the purpose of this discussion.
You know that you're going to have an interim executive.
Yes, we're gonna put it in
So why didn't you have it on there?
because it wasn't in this one here. I worked off this. I don't.
Then this is not good.
Ryan, we can make the adjustment when we go along. So. What we did, and Biggi and Gwenis have provided input, we have used certain enrollment, anticipated enrollment, and you can walk us through the enrollment features. And then we're going to walk into go through the mechanics of the budget. We'll talk about the executive director, and then we're going to move forward on the discussion. I'm not passing judgment on anything. All I'm doing is bringing this data forward. Okay? So, the staffing, so Ryan, you want to start, maybe you start from the top. Start with the, we're not going to talk about individual payrolls, but start from the top.
Okay, at the top of the page, it shows the enrollment that we will be assuming for next year.
Right?
We're assuming 409 students at an average daily attendance rate percentage of 96%. 96% is lower than we have historically had. We're using 96% to be conservative. The school has typically met 97% or close to 98% consistently for a few years now. So what you see is you see two columns. One is 17-18 and one is 18-19. So there's some variances. So a lot of the money, everything that we're going to be talking about on the revenue side is completely tied to enrollment. Okay, so lower students means lower funding. So you'll see that the total for local control funding formula is slightly lower than the previous year. That's because we have less students.
Right, so stop there. Can we get a read on the enrollment? Biggi.
The enrollment that we are anticipating is the one that the 409 is what we presented last time at the board meeting, which would be one class for TK, separate standalone TK class, 2 classes for kindergarten, and then 3 classes for first grade, 3 classes for second grade, 2 classes for third grade, 3 for fourth grade, and 2 for 5th grade, with a total of 16 classes compared to 17 classes that we have this year, and that we decided to do because the enrollment of kindergarten seemed very slow, and we did not want to end up with the situation that the classes are not fully enrolled, and we have a high cost to operate these classes and can't finance them. Also, in order to run the acquisition program on a smoother and better basis, it was very beneficial for us to have 2 acquisition classrooms, not just one. So it all, as a big picture, makes sense to have 16 classrooms plus then 2 acquisition classrooms. And one special education. That's the 19 teaching stations that we were awarded by Prop 39. And the 16 classrooms come out to 409 students.
Anticipated. If everybody were to show up, how many students would we have?
If everybody showed up in the lower grades, what we are enrolling, and with the upper grades, especially also the returning students, we would be up at 426.
Okay.
How have we been trending though the last couple of years?
That's exactly the point. We've been trending that between 5 and 10% of students don't show. So that's why we didn't want to budget at 426, but lower than that to be more realistic.
So right now we have how many kids at the school?
416.
416.
Ryan, could you do on your computer, what would it do if everybody were to show up and we're not changing anything? Could you give us a number of how the budget is, how the budget would change? If the net income would change based on the full enrollment of 425 in order to accommodate an executive director position.
I can tell you how the revenue would change.
Yes, and we're not changing anything else.
Okay. So
Because
because
they-
426. Would have an additional $187,000.
Okay, so that opens up the space.
Yeah, but I would also assume that with those additional kids, you would also need additional teaching positions.
Not
Did I
necessarily.
miss? Okay.
Okay, so the question is, would that require an additional teaching position if everybody shows up?
No.
Okay, good. So the delta is how much?
187.
187. Okay. And 426. Thank you.
425, we would need additional teachers. 425 would be 25 students in 17 classrooms, not 16 classrooms.
But
If
when,
you, or you put more students, the way we have it.
the way we have it,
Yes,
the way we have
it's
it.
possible.
Okay, so we can handle it, but full enrollment, well,
I mean, well, that's all.
we don't know.
But your average class size is now like 24?
Right now,
Yeah.
as of this school year, is 416 divided by 17 classrooms is 24.5.
Okay, so if we go off of that number, and we do 16 classrooms,
Times 16 classrooms is 391 students.
okay, so should we not be budgeting for 390 and then maybe another budget at 405? We should be doing 2 or 3 different
Yeah.
budgets.
So that's a very good point. I think I picked the numbers they've given me, but there is a low range number, which was BIMS, and there's a high range number. So I appreciate the comment that we should have a budget on 391, right?
Well,
Did
if
we
you
say-
take 16 classrooms times 25, the average that you're saying, the classroom, you're at 400.
Right,
That might be more conservative.
right, because what we talked about last night, Biggi, was that it's hard to project.
Yeah, it
You
is
know,
hard.
We're doing the budget
It is.
now, and the kids may not show up
That's
in
right.
August. And so
Exactly.
that puts us in a really tough situation, because we're making the hiring decisions now.
Absolutely
And we have
correct.
to, we just cannot afford to be in the red again, so we have to really tighten up, make some tough decisions.
And there are no students on the wait list for the upper grades. So the experience on last year, with this school year, we've lost a lot of children in the upper grades, and we weren't able to enroll kids in these grade levels. So it's correct that we should anticipate.
I think we should do one at 390 and maybe one at, what we're doing now at 4.
409.
And one in full enrollment. Yeah, 3 budgets, I agree. Could you say, give us a quick snapshot of where we would end up from what the delta would be at 390 at the worst case scenario?
Or let's say 390, 400, and 410. Because 410 is the most.
Yeah, so we could do 3 scenarios if you like.
Yeah. Great.
Because
But for 26, we would need students on the wait list. We don't have students on the wait list in the upper grades, so you cannot fill. with
But
a
when
high
you count
level.
all these numbers, these numbers with all the shows for 426, right? That's the best case scenario. Yeah, it's the best case scenario.
Right, that's,
426 is the best case, 390 is the worst case, 49, that
409
likely,
in the middle.
49 in the middle. What's the delta on the,
Going from 409 to 390 is 19 less students.
yeah,
That's about 209,000 lower revenue.
lower revenue, so we would basically, we would be $200,000 in the red. As a net revenue. Okay. We good?
We
Would
go
we-
to 390, we can't sustain that many teachers.
Just keep in the model, I mean, just keep in the model as the staffing model, which is this.
Okay.
Yeah. At one point in time, there needs to be major changes to it.
Frank, can I just quickly ask, because we were wondering, public comments usually at the beginning, is it,
At the beginning or through the end, we'll open it up,
okay.
yeah. Okay, what else is there, Ryan, on the revenue side?
Nothing, I mean, the only thing that's not driven by the number of, well, one thing that we have that's a positive is mandate block grant funds. We're gonna have one-time funding next year. And for this current school year, we received $68,000 from the program. For next year, we're planning on 126. So there is some one-time funding that will be available.
Is that incorporated in this number?
That's incorporated into these numbers.
Right. Can we talk about the fundraising then?
That's a for sure thing, or?
Yeah. Well, that's what the governor is proposing, and it could go up, actually. But yeah, what we have in there right now,
90% sure?
I don't know, I'm not gonna promise anything. If you'd like me to remove it, I can.
Well, I think we would hold it at what it is this year, right?
I think that this is the amount that's in there is what's recommended by school services in California. And I believe it to be a conservative estimate for the one-time funds. I don't think that there's a risk of that. The big risk is
The big risk is what?
the delta of 209 if you drop to 309 kids.
Right. All the other schools, you're making planning budgets with planning for that amount?
The one-time funds.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But they're not using it to sustain anything. They're one-time in nature, so they shouldn't fund things that are not one-time in nature. So if you wanted like one-time furniture purchase, great. Position, absolutely not, because the funds are coming for next year. You don't want to rely on it. Yeah.
Good.
Fundraising is what you asked about next.
Yes.
We lowered the assumption from 535,000 to 425,000. So about $110,000 decrease in our expected fundraising revenue.
Question to Biggi. Are we on track of making our fundraising budget for this year?
Question, I'm not completely up to date. March was the last financials that we had, and that showed, if I recall from yesterday correctly, 70,000 under what we should be at this time. But we will receive shortly a check for $52,000 from the gala. The credit card payments that hadn't been settled so far because we hadn't closed the online system. So that has been closed now. So we should be pretty close to what we had budgeted and what we should be at this point in time. But
So in the budget assumptions we have made is they're basically, on average, we're getting $15,000 from the German government. Take that out. So it's, you bring it down to basically 410, which is basically $1,000 per parent per student. Per student.
So we're gonna lower it from 1,800 to 1,000.
no,
That's-
We still have.
What's
so
it?
we're not lowering the pledge drive ask. The $1,000 is an average and not everybody pays $1,800. In order to end up with $1,000 per student on average, we need to have a good amount of people who pay the $1,800 and who participate in other fundraising events that you have that average. Because a lot of people don't pay $1,800. So if you lower to 1,000, you would probably end up with an average of between 500 and 600, if at all.
Are there fundraisers that we're not gonna do next year, or? I don't understand.
No. Well, for the $1,800, if you want $1,800, or if you lower that, usually when we look at what the pledge drives gets us, is an average of about half, so $800 to $900 per person, not $1,800.
Yes, no, I get that, but we're gonna have 100,000 less, right? So we had a very high goal this year and we met it. And now we're gonna lower the bar by 100,000. Are we planning on changing something?
No,
Or
it's
are
just
we gonna have
first-
the same number of fundraisings, or?
More or less, if we can find the volunteers. The plan for me would be to put into the calendar for next year the same fundraising activities.
Why are we expecting less if we're gonna do the same
Because
activities?
we're getting more diverse and the donations in the grades that will be 3rd, 4th, and 5th next year have been very slow this year. So the ones that, so just in anticipation, I don't think that we'll end up with the same overall in the pledge drive.
So our 5th grade
And we
parents,
only have 2 kindergarten classes instead of 3, and the tendency is that kindergarten parents donate more because they were used to preschool payments. So if you put that all into consideration, I think the pledge drive itself will be less than it was this year.
because less kindergarten parents.
Less kindergarten parents and the
5th grade parents that are leaving us were really good.
were good at donating outdoors.
If everybody could just project a little bit more so that the
Yeah.
audio is picked up.
Yeah, and so,
Well, one more question. So, how close are we to getting a second, not a second, but another TK or K class? We don't have, we're not anywhere near.
Kindergarten, we have only 12 students on the wait list left as of right now. So it would not make sense to open another kindergarten or transitional kindergarten.
but that being said, this is also a delta, if, where we can, if we go for an executive director as decided by the board, then,
It's not where we're gonna go for it. We've already decided.
so we decided to hire an executive director. This is where the money also should come from without cutting into programs. Not changing the staffing model in the back. Just the additional position is also can come from fundraising laws. So this is where the money is to balance the budget. I'm not saying it needs to be, but that is a mechanism where it's going to be, where it can come from.
Okay, Biggi just explained the reasons why she thinks we're gonna be $100,000 less.
Yes.
So, I agree with her analysis. I think it's dead on. We're losing some really good 5th grade parents. we're having less at the lower level.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Excuse me, can we speak a little louder? I'm hard of hearing.
Oh, yes.
I would appreciate that very much.
Sure.
Thank you.
I can't really hear you
Okay.
very well. When you're
Yeah, if we can turn that off, that would help too.
Okay.
There's some construction going on right there.
Okay.
I'm hard of hearing.
That should.
Thank you.
That's better, yeah.
So that's on the revenue side. Spending.
Well, as far as spending goes, I would imagine that if enrollment went down or up, as the examples that they described with revenue, that there would also be some changes on the expense side as well. Out of curiosity, Gwenis, I don't know if you know the answer to this one, but if we dropped from 409 to 390 students, what would that do to the facility cost here? Would that be a savings of 10,000, 20,000?
You're talking Prop 39
Yeah.
cost?
It's-
That doesn't change.
Okay.
You're still renting the classroom.
Okay. And we would
You
still
mean
need
the
the
square
same number
footage?
of, we
Yeah.
would still need the square footage?
I'm not sure at this point if you can turn a room back, and I don't think they're going to get in that practice, because once you start turning rooms back to them, you may not get them back in the future.
Okay.
You know, and I'm not sure we can do that.
Okay, so rent might not be something, rent typically
Right.
isn't something that can be moved, but in Prop
No.
39, I thought maybe. So then, I'm kind of not so sure how to go forward on the expense side. A lot of it is a function of enrollment. I'm happy to answer questions maybe.
Yeah,
I
but
don't
just
know
the
how to-
basic, I mean.
As far as the staffing plan goes, there was a handout on the academic side. I think that it's important for everyone to understand the complexity of this program, because to me it's really interesting and amazing. Because I've not seen a school that had to have so many different teachers for one class. And I think that that's both, like I said, interesting and kind of amazing, because not just one kindergarten teacher, but one that speaks, one for English, one for German. And then in the upper grades, also there's acquisition, which also requires staff. So already that model is quite expensive and unique, because no other elementary schools have to have that many teachers for one group of kids. Nevertheless, due to the fact that the kids aren't with the same person throughout the day, I think that I observed some very strategic usage of the classrooms and the teachers that we have on the handout. I don't know if you have that in front of you. But some teachers that are teaching in one class in English, and then how they switch when the German teacher takes over that class, and then they go to the English. You know, that's, I don't know how to really describe much about the expenses, Frank. I will say that I think that as far as the academic program goes in the classroom, that it's been reduced down and is used as efficiently as possible, given the complexities of the program.
So did we ask, what were the changes made to the classrooms? I think there were some efficiency gains you highlighted this year. And there
Yes,
was
we saved one teacher's salary by combining the acquisition classes. You know, we were tightening up the groupings in the classes. We were able to save one teacher's salary.
I
That
have a
was per
question.
Pete's suggestion way back. Yeah.
So one of the things that I don't really understand is we have a lot of coordinators. We have 4 coordinators, and are they coordinators in all?
Miss Cornelio is also a full-time
Can you-
resource teacher.
IEP.
So she is a RSP, is what it's called, for special ed, so she has a caseload of students that she teaches, besides coordinating the IEPs.
Is it special needs kids or?
Yes, yes.
And IEP stands for?
Individualized educational plan. Every special education student requires one.
And how many kids do we have here now?
Services?
Yes.
I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, but it's well over 30 students.
Well over 30
Oh,
students?
yeah. I could get you that number exactly, but I'd have to look it up.
Does the VP position, Mr. Levy, does he have a similar role or?
Mr. Levy is in charge of student safety, welfare, and also discipline. He also is in charge of the counseling intern program and oversees special ed as part of his duties.
Special ed? Special ed is different than,
He's kind of the overseer of the whole program, where the IEP coordinator is the instructor for the special education students, as well as writes their IEPs, coordinates their IEP meetings, and runs the IEP meetings.
so there's no chance to consolidate the position?
You would have to take some of the duties of Mr. Levy and put them somewhere else in terms of discipline and safety. Because that's not really, that would be separate from special education.
Okay.
In
And,
the special education part, yes, but not the other parts of the students.
okay, but some of his other duties, it's possible to get someone else to do.
Yeah.
Okay. And Mrs. Jones, what is, she's in charge of the teachers?
Curriculum and instruction.
So most of her day is spent doing what?
Supporting teachers, teaching, learning, professional development, mentoring teachers.
And what about Biggi and Director of Operations? What's your typical day look like, Biggi?
You did get the job descriptions already.
They're very brief.
Oh,
I sent you all the job descriptions, but I can resend them.
they should be real, yeah, there should be a lot of information. Are you looking at the job description in the charter?
I did, yes.
Yeah, that's briefer. I mean,
Okay.
more brief, not briefer, more brief than the actual job description.
Okay. But Biggi, just real quick, if you don't mind.
It depends of the time of the year. So right now, most of my time is spent for HR to create the contracts for everybody, to make sure that the credentials are up to date, that the TB, everything that the teachers need to have is up to date. Then the first part of the year, a lot of it is Prop 39 to do a lot of that work. And then everything that is around here with the facility, everything that is around finances, oversee the finances.
Don't we have someone who does finance?
George does the booking of it, but I monitor the budget along with Gwenis. So George doesn't approve invoices, he puts them in, but he doesn't approve them. So someone needs to go through it and needs to make sure that everything is correct, or when ordering has to take place, or, yeah. As I said, facility stuff, the bathrooms are not working or anything, so everything to keep this place running. And then on top of it, the fundraising. So when come start of the school year, I'm organizing the pledge drive and make sure that there's everything running smoothly. Then in then all the little events in between, plus then in November, the gala preparation start that goes through March. And then, as I said, all the in-betweens of that. I do every Thursday evening the newsletter, which takes me 3 hours, right? But, so everything to keep this place running.
Okay. And we have so EL coordinator is code, she teaches.
And the other part of her job is Spanish instructor, Spanish teacher for grades 3, 4, 5. And then she does the testing, which is her EL coordinator role is the testing for English learners.
Okay, so she does both.
Some of these really have 2 jobs.
And so difference between the language coordinator and the EL coordinator.
EL coordinator works specifically with students that are still receiving English learner services and are still required to take the annual test. Also, all new students coming in take a test. If they do a home language survey, indicate there's a language other than English spoken in the home. So she does all the initial tests as well as annual tests for students who are still considered English learners.
How many kids do we have?
I would have brought all that, I'm sorry.
Just off the top of your head, what do you, that number is?
Close to 100.
100 kids.
Yeah, maybe 70, between 80 and
25% of the kids are English as a second
100.
language.
20, I'd say 20%. But I can get you those numbers. I
Okay.
didn't bring them.
And what about the language coordinator?
That's currently a role, that's a stipend role filled by a 4th grade teacher. So she is a full-time 4th grade German teacher who receives a stipend to work with our German teachers in the German language program. in the
Vertical
immersion program.
integration of the program.
Okay. Does she work summers or?
Her contract is longer than the teacher's contract to do the coordinating job. The teacher's contract is 186 days, and theirs 205 days.
And the IB coordinator?
That's a full-time position, and focuses totally on the program, the IBP program.
Is that a required full-time position or we just?
It is looked upon very highly as for authorization purposes, yes.
But could 2 people fill that role? Could like a vice principal role
It could be done.
and maybe utilize that person as a teacher as well?
Depends on who the people are. But yes, you can put more jobs on people, it's just you want to make sure you have the right person doing it.
Okay. And then the last, attendance and admissions officer, Christian. What on a day-to-day basis, what are you?
I monitor all the tardies and absences. I go through all the excuses that parents send in and then put that in the system, whether something was excused or not. I run a number of reports on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, everything that is required. At this time of year, I do a lot of enrollments, obviously. Parents come in, I go through the enrollment packet, make sure that that is all complete, that all the required paperwork is turned in. And then once we have the full enrollment that we're working on, then I go through all the enrollment packets and put that into the system, into PowerSchool. And then I work with our coordinator, with Meredith Gillette at Measure That, to make sure that that is all correct and that also the correct data that is sent out to CalPads and MySys and everything that is connected.
Any more questions?
Nope, I think I've got pretty much a better idea.
Okay. Then there's these salaries. We can't talk about individual salaries in open session. That's a given. So the classified and the This represents the current roster which you have in front of you. The employee benefits are a function thereof. Ryan, could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, all the employee benefits, they're a function of the salaries. Certificated staff is also participants in the state teacher retirement system, known as STRS. If anyone is interested in that, you can Google it and you'll find that it's an underfunded state program. And the cost of it is very expensive for the schools. The rate that the employer has to contribute has gone up substantially over the years, and it continues to rise. And that's a hardship on all schools in the state because our funding has plateaued. So for a couple of years, our funding was on the rise and our expenses were also on the rise, but now our funding has plateaued and expenses continue to go up. So
Expenses continue to go up because of?
Because of the state and the governor's budgets, and also because people on salary, their salaries increase over time too with COLAs and other things.
Gwenis, can you explain why the payroll is going up every year?
Well, we have, in terms of
How this works?
you're talking the steps and columns.
Yes.
Yes. So, depending, the columns equate to education, and a teacher can move over a column, which is a pay raise, by obtaining a master's degree. And then we have other columns after that, a master's degree plus more 30 hours of graduate level classes, and it goes 45 hours of graduate level classes, 60 hours of graduate level classes. So that constitutes a pay raise depending on education. Then the steps are what goes every year as a step. So the salary increases a step for each year. And that equates to the cost of living, which is 2.8%. Am I right? 2.8? Yeah,
Of that.
about 2.8% increase in salary every year, each year.
So what Ryan was referring to is that the situation is, getting, if income, enrollment and income is stable, there is a problem embedded in the budget by itself that every year, just by the acceleration of the payroll, we're going to go into we're going to have to fundraise more and more and more in order to balance the budget, or cut other expenses in that sense, in that regards. We have adopted a LAUSD.
2 years ago, our teachers received a pay increase based on LAUSD salary scale, and that's been a few years.
But
right now, it's really a little bit under, I think, the neighboring districts now.
Okay.
But they did receive a pay raise 2 years.
Right.
Okay. Other thing you'll notice that health and welfare, we're anticipating about 46,000 more next year. That's not to say that's what's going to happen. It's just that to be conservative, we have assumed every single full-time person to receive 100% of what they possibly can as listed in our cap as a cap for benefits. We know that sometimes people opt out; they're on their spouse's plan, or sometimes people in different age groups or different medical needs they don't require the same level of benefits. But out of conservatism, we have decided to assume, in the worst case scenario, that every single person would take 100% of the benefits.
What was our pickup rate? Did we penetrate the maximum pickup by teacher every year? Is that a reasonable assumption, or is that, what was it last year, the question? The pickup, did everybody use the $700?
700.
This year, first time,
Yeah.
get, most of them who use it get very close to the 700 or actually go over. So this year was the year that I had to do the most authorizations for payroll deduction, because once they go over the allocation, it's coming out of their paycheck. The previous years, it was less, so, and more teachers or full-time employees would use lower plans, not the full allocation. I can't tell you a percentage though.
Okay. Anything else to the payroll? We then would go into supplies. Discretionary spending, operating expenses with the 4,000 and 5,000 categories.
Okay, well, as far as the 4,000 series goes, those are all of the supplies. The first three, 4110, 4210, and 4310, those are all items that go directly in the classroom. You have your core curriculum, you have your student consumables, construction paper, art supplies, workbooks, testing materials. We've assumed that the cost of these items would be similar to the cost that they were this year. I don't have any other big detail to say. I just would point out that we're anticipating the same numbers, more or less. Those could go down or up depending on the number of students that actually show up. As far as custodial supplies go, this is a district facility. They are the ones who keep it clean, and they are the ones who, provide all of the real cleaning materials. We have a small budget, about $500, just for, paper towels, emergency items, cleaning sprays, nothing major, because, again, you're on a district facility. We're not anticipating any purchases for technology, really. We don't need new computers. We're planning on about, $2,000 in the event that we would need to replace some Chromebooks or replace anything, but there's no new purchases needed for next year. The big category here is your nutrition program. So school lunch costs money. A good portion of this cost is offset by the students who don't qualify for free and reduced price meals. Those students are required to pay for their meals. So we do anticipate some of that coming back in the form of payments from the students. We also
These payments of the students are not incorporated on the revenue stream yet?
Oh, it's some of it's in there.
Some of them it's in the top, in the income side.
Yeah, it's we're saying that we're gonna get about $20,000 of it back,
Okay.
and we typically do.
The parents are allowed to pay like on a 30 net or a 60-day net? Or?
That'd be how often are parents paying? Are they a month behind? Or?
They are typically good. We have some candidates who are a month and more behind. They get invoices twice a month, every 2 weeks.
And the other food, the non-recoverable are because of the free and reduced lunch, right?
Yes and no, yes. A piece of it is that. The other piece is that as a charter school, we're paying the lunches, or the lunches that we pay have two components to it. One component is just the food, and the other component is preparation of the food. And the preparation of the food we have to cover for all students. So we're not invoicing the full paying students the full amount that we pay. We're just invoicing them the portion that the food costs, which is out of a $5 lunch, about $3 or a little under $3 and a little over $2 of each lunch. Even for a full paying student, we have to cover. and a student who is reduced price lunch only pays 40 cents for a lunch. So you have a good amount, and then obviously the free students, they pay nothing, and we pay the whole amount. But even for those who pay the lunches, we pay probably 35 to 40% of their lunch cost.
Okay. Lucio, any questions on this one?
Not so far.
Okay, then we go into operating expenses category 5,000.
Yeah, so the 5,000 series, and you know, I think that it's important to before I step away from the supplies, because we're dealing with public funds, we get a lot of restricted funding, and it's important that we tag those dollars to eligible expenditures. For example, the California State Lottery, right? They give a percentage of the money that they take in to schools across the state. And part of the requirements is Proposition 20. It says that schools must set aside roughly 20% of those funds, and they must be spent on student materials, right? So we have that in here already. It's not negotiable, right? And there's a lot of other revenue sources that come with those same stipulations, like special education, right? You can't say that, well, we want to negotiate and we want to get rid of special education expenses. You can't do that because you're getting money. It's restricted, and you're obligated to spend that money for those students. Okay? So I'm just saying that as we move through the expenditures, because as we get into the services, it's important to understand that as recipients of public funds, there are certain things that are just non-negotiable. Okay? So as we go down into the service section, we start with, I believe it is travel and conferences, okay? So with our local control funding formula, we receive a portion of those funds that ask us and actually dictate that we employ highly qualified teachers and teaching staff, and in order for those people to maintain their credibility, we have to send them off to different workshops and conferences throughout the year, okay? And we have to expose them to a certain amount of professional development, all right? So we have an amount in here of $5,000 for travel and conferences, and you know, I think that that's an appropriate amount to send people off to these. You know, the only question would be, are we thinking critically and sending them to the right conferences? Okay.
It's a big cut though. Is that going to be doable, or?
I think so, because, well, and that's a very good observation. So professional development comes in many different forms, right? You can do in-house professional development where you have lead teachers teaching the junior teachers or the newer teachers. You can have conferences where people go out, right? And you send them places, like you can send them down to Atlanta for a math symposium, or to San Diego for a STEM academy or something for science. But you don't have to send people out. You can also contract with like the Los Angeles County Office of Education or different instructional coaches to come here, and you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to, you know, pay for mileage. You don't have to pay for overnight stays. So we're lowering the outside travel to conferences from next year, but we also still have other professional development that we're saying is going to be in-house, and it's not going to require people to incur additional travel expenses when we send them to conferences. So maybe that plan can change if other conferences are identified and you would prefer to send them someplace. But I would ask that the board and school leadership think critically and say that if we're sending people out, that we would reduce the amount of money from outside consultants coming in and coaching. Yeah.
That makes sense.
And with our program, the IB program, we have mandatory trainings
Yep.
as well.
Yep, I was just worried that, we're cutting it.
No, it's a great
50%,
observation.
And
Yeah.
it's, are we gonna be able to do
Yeah.
it?
Yeah,
And
we've cut the travel part of it.
Yeah.
We scholarships, more in-house training.
Okay.
And then continue on the list, I mean,
Okay. Dues and memberships, we lowered that by about $4,000. In the meetings that we had, building up to this meeting, school leadership and also different members of the finance committee have looked at current spend and decided that, you know, of the things that we pay into, we want to try to consolidate those and not spend as much. You know, you don't have to register for every little thing. We're trying to think more critically about what we're signing up for.
What would you say is our biggest
Well,
dues that we pay out?
The IB,
IB.
and that's required.
So IB is required, membership to the California Charter Schools
Association will be
Association.
the next time.
I mean, there's little things like,
We
you know,
belong
like
to the
there's-
California Association for Bilingual Educators. We also
Yeah.
belong to LAX Chamber of Commerce. That's a small, those are small. A big chunk comes for the IB, to the IB organization.
General insurance, we are budgeting for $35,000, which is a little bit higher than the previous year. This is an estimate, but we're waiting on the proposal still, I believe, from CharterSafe, who is our provider. So there's typically not much movement other than COLA here, but we haven't yet received the proposal from the insurance brokerage firm. So we put in $35,000 as a placeholder. Okay, and that covers all of your insurance, your accident insurance and other things, parking lot insurance, stuff like that. If anything breaks down, water damage, computers, things like that. Operation and housekeeping, this should typically be $0 for you guys, right? But we have decided, and the parents have spoken and said that, you know what, LAUSD, it's their job to keep this place clean, but we don't think they're doing a good enough job. So we have asked LAUSD to send additional janitorial support for the school. And what that comes out to have somebody here all year long is roughly $40,000.
for our share.
For our share of it. It's unfortunate that the district is gonna charge us more for that. If anyone wants to complain, you can go talk to them. But
But Gwenis, you want to provide a background on this one?
Well, why don't you start on it?
Well,
Because
it's a
know
fully
more than I
loaded
do.
payroll. It's been shared between Marina Del Rey Middle School and us, and it's a.
It's a 50-50
It's a
partnership.
50-50 partnership.
Seems to be working for two reasons. It helps maintain cleanliness in our campus, plus it also builds relationships with the middle school, and the fact that we're able to help out so that they have a full-time employee as well. So it's kind of a relationship and cleaning building thing.
Okay, they
That's
haven't
two
charged us,
purposes.
they haven't charged us for this year.
not yet,
Yet.
but
Not yet.
they, we don't wanna assume they will forget.
Right,
So,
right.
No, they will not.
So we're keeping the expense there.
So it's a goodwill, like towards
It's a
the
good,
middle school.
it's too,
And are they doing any goodwills towards us, or are they doing anything nice for us?
let's see, lately. I mean, I could go back in past and say, yes, this room was goodwill given to us in the past. I don't know lately, but we haven't negotiated yet for next year, so we'll see how that turns out. But I know if we need the NPR on days that are not necessarily our assigned days, she's always very willing to do that for us and open to that. And I just think it's been a smooth going this year. I don't really see any difficulties. As far as little gifts to us, such as extra rooms, that didn't happen this year. We were hoping we could get a little closet with books, but that just didn't happen. But there's next year.
All right, the next item, and it's the largest item in the category, is the facility cost. You'll notice that it went up quite a bit from last year to this year. This is is it the final proposal from them?
Yes.
Initial
Yes,
final?
April 1st, yes, we received it.
Are we
Okay.
still
But we
negotiating?
still are, but we still now do the shared use negotiation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so the district gives you,
it's already taken off.
The already shared negotiation? Yeah, okay.
It's already taken off.
it's already been
Yes.
taken off? Okay.
So it's a pure on a square footage increase, right? Price increase.
Yes, almost a thousand,
Over $1.20, I think.
Yeah.
So our lease cost for the Prop 39 went up.
Yeah.
Yep.
But, I mean, when you compare it to the lease cost that you would be paying on a private facility, it's still a good deal. $650 per student, it's not that bad, especially on the west side. Typically what we see is, or what we hope to see is no more than about $1,200 per student. So 650 is still reasonable. I mean, I know it increased from last year to this year, but it's still a pretty good deal. Equipment lease, this is our copiers. And, they're necessary because teachers and instructional aides are making copies all the time to send home with the children. And it adds up over time. So we have, Biggi, I believe we have 2 machines.
We have 2 big machines and then one in the office.
2 big machines, 1 in the office. So we have a contract for those, and then we get paid based off of usage. So
We have to be paid. We have to pay based on usage.
we do pay based on usage, but sometimes there's overages.
Right?
And then sometimes there's additional costs when you choose to print in color versus choosing to print in black and white.
It's about 10 times the cost.
About 10 times the cost, right? So what we are tasking the admin staff with is to try to lower the amount associated with the overages or the amounts associated with color copies, so that we can still provide the same handouts, but just more black and white than color.
How many machines do we have?
I believe you said 3, right?
Yes, 2 real bigger machines and then one on a smaller machine in the office.
But so the equipment lease is not just for those 3?
No.
It's for-
There's more stuff. So the copier lease, and then you also have storage,
We have 1 mobile mini.
mobile mini. You have it houses a lot of your records and what else do you got?
Well, the shed that Coach Washington uses and our teacher uses. So one of the 2 belongs to us. We bought that where the emergency supplies are in, and the other one is leased.
But that includes like the toner and everything.
Yes, the copier is a monthly cost.
It's all
that
part of the
includes-
contract.
Correct,
It is,
that
okay.
includes the lease, the copies, and the toner and everything. And for the copies, it's calculated on an average usage over 6 months, because we have month where we use it less and the other month where we use it more. So the average is calculated on always 6 months, and it's a monthly fee.
Isn't there also a correlation between the IB and not being a textbook school and then that we have higher copying costs, Gwenis? Because we're not a textbook school by
Right,
itself,
right.
with the exception for the math program,
Yes,
right?
you could say that, yeah. Because the math program has a workbook, a textbook, not really a textbook program.
So it does require a lot of copies.
Right, but it almost seems like you could go out and buy one of these things, or a couple of them, and just own them. And not brand new, but you could maybe go out and buy some and cut down on the costs, Probably be a lot to manage, but seems like a lot of money.
Yeah, I think
We
you're
can
probably.
look into it. I don't know what a copy machine costs, so I have no idea. Here we have the service included. Those were new machines, so whenever something doesn't work, you call and they come and it's fixed right away. So it has It has
Those
a
things
lot of-
cost about $40,000.
a lot of
Right.
advantages.
Yeah, those are expensive.
Right, but I wonder what the life of them are. I don't know,
Yeah.
I'm sure we got some kind of parents on campus who deal with that, so just something to look into, I guess.
Well, I'm gonna continue to talk, but,
Yes, please,
but
sir.
I've,
Yeah,
but I've
well,
exhausted my computer, so when it dies, I'm gonna ask for a piece of paper so that I can continue.
Yeah, okay, sure.
my speech here. So, the next item is vendor repairs. Like I said, you're on a district facility. If something breaks down, they're the ones who fix it, right? So if there's a plumbing problem in the bathroom, you don't have to pay for plumbers. There should really not be any cost here. We've always put a couple $100, a few $100 just in case. But these costs are minimal to non-existent because, like I said, this isn't your building. Field trips, we have put in $10,000 for next year. This school has lots of different field trips that it has associated to the different classrooms. One thing that I believe is, from my perspective, this has always kind of been hard to gauge because of the active parents with the money that's raised from the cafe and other efforts to provide different fundraising events throughout the year. So as of now, we have $10,000 in here, but I don't believe that we have the money that we could be raising from the cafe and other parent-led initiatives. So, you know, this number could go up if more activities are done throughout the year. And every year you guys have a lot of activities that generate fundraising that translates into field trips. So I don't know that I don't think $10,000 is going to be the actual cost. I think that will fluctuate up, not down.
But it's on here because fundraising is also revenue, so you put it on here, even though it's not coming out of our other funds. It's just basically countering whatever fundraising we do, right? So the 500,000 plus that we raised.
You can look at it that way, or you can say that the $10,000 is coming out of your general fund and that fundraising is funding something completely different. I don't know what the money is earmarked for when you do a jogathon or when you do a gala. You know, is it for field trips or is it for something different? But definitely right. That argument could be made if that's what the fundraising is for.
But every fundraising dollar we raise is a public dollar. It becomes automatically a public dollar. It's not. Do you want to elaborate on that number? Because you know you can't just say this is fundraising money and this is other public money, because we're operating under this umbrella. Everything goes into the general fund, whether it's earmarked or not.
Yeah, I mean the only reason anyone can donate to us and anyone does donate to us really is because we're a 501c3, we're a nonprofit. So as such, you're a public entity, and the money that it generates kind of belongs to the public.
Right.
It's spent how you guys want to spend it, but in the event, let's say the school shut down, that money doesn't just get to stick with us. It goes back to the public and it's used a different way.
Right, but this budget, it's proposing like cutting field trips by a third, right?
Mm-hmm.
And is that because we're planning on fundraising less, or?
Sorry?
I see, we're cutting the field trips this year by a third, right? The budget's being slashed by a third. And is that because we're anticipating fundraising is gonna go down by 25%, or 20%, I guess?
I think it's more or less students, because the field trips are typically financed by Goethe cafes, like Brian said. So it's because we have less students, and I think the 15,000, we are not yet completely there. So we're lower than 15,000, and
Do you have it in your hand?
we have some, but they don't necessarily
That's all right.
have all the, this is the second piece that you want now.
No, I got what I need. I don't need extra. Thank you.
You're saying that
this was last year's budget, but we're actually under.
Right.
We're a little under there still, and we're at the end of the school year. We will have less students next year, so we just kind of made it a round number. Could be that we should put 12,000 or whatever. But the field trips are usually funded from the Goethe Cafe, that the classrooms, the money that the classrooms raise.
Okay, so you don't anticipate less field trips next year? It'll be the same number?
I don't, because we've done this, basically the same field trips for the last 9 years that I've been here. I remember fourth grade always going to the same field trips and other classes, so I would be surprised if all of a sudden there would be other or less field trips, because they go together with the units of inquiry, and they make sense.
Okay.
Legal?
Legal fees, this is legal and audit. Those we're anticipating a decrease. We had some one-time expenditures in the current school year that we don't anticipate for next year. I mean, those types of costs are associated to the money that went into the charter renewal petition. Those are costs that went into other operational matters, and it's money that went into a few due processes that were one-time in nature.
Gwenis, do you want these due processes were legacy issues which were spilling over, right, in this school year?
They started last year, yes.
They started, so this is actually settlements due process,
Yep.
and this is special ed. So there were some settlements in there which drove up the legal cost. And now is the question is the process now with the special ed coordinator and, you know, the investments we have made, has that calmed down?
It's been a good year. It's been a good year. We'll keep it that way.
Yeah,
We
Okay.
can't guarantee it's gonna stay that way,
right,
but we hope.
okay.
All right, advertisement and recruitment. You'll see that we have increased that from a little over 5,000 to 20,000. Does anyone want to?
Yeah, this is the finder's fee for the permanent executive director.
Yeah, so there's they had put in an allowance to search for an executive director, and these were the costs associated with that.
We have the
Assumed projected costs associated with that, as well as, you know, any other costs that would have to do with advertising the brand of the school,
Right.
right? Any question? No? Okay, moving on to non-instructional consultants, okay? The big item and the important item here is professional development for teachers, right? And there's different categories for this school because there's so many different programs that it offers. But we have a balance for IB, professional development and consultation, ELD and ELA.
Gwenis?
Right, Gwenis?
We're talking about professional development consultants. That would be for our social emotional learning aspect.
Yeah. There's also costs for IT. You have an IT
The
consultant.
IT is in there, we have, right, for technology, correct?
And then you also have a balance in there for Measure Education, which is a consultant that helps with student data, because student data is how we get our money. It's very important that information is always accurate in terms of demographics and you know, the population that you service here, because not only does your revenue tie to actual bodies, but it also ties to the socioeconomic you know, background of the school. And it's very important that those numbers are always accurate. Any questions on the non-instructional side?
Instructional consultants, we're gonna move it along.
Instructional consultants, these are, the big categories here are special education and substitute teachers. Special education isn't cheap. While we have in-house special education, we're also obligated to use the money that we receive for special education, as well as service the unique needs of the population that we have. And because that's always kind of questionable, it's very, very normal to contract out for different providers to come in. I don't know, I'm not an expert in the matter. Perhaps Gwenis would like to elaborate.
That is set aside for speech therapy, occupational therapy, adaptive PE, and also psychologist fees and testing fees. And as Brian said, it's hard to predict because it's based on the student's IEP, what additional services they need besides the RSP.
Okay, and you said we get money for that, right, for services, or?
We get an allotment for federal funding for special education.
Roughly, what is that? Do you know, just top of your head?
Not off the top of my head, but I will say, and this is an important piece to understand, is that the amount of money that you get for special education is not a function of how many special ed students you have. They give you a certain amount of money based on the total kids that you have. Now, a school could have a very high special ed population and that not be enough, or a school could have a very low population and it be too much, right? You guys have a large amount of special ed students here at this school, and unfortunately, the amount of money that you get is never enough.
We were able to bring that down for next year by outsourcing them as instructional consultants. We have that MOU at Pepperdine, where we have counseling intern services, which are free. So I said we'll bring it down with it.
And then substitute teachers, it's necessary when you send teachers to professional development, when teachers get sick, or multiple reasons why you would need a substitute teacher. But we also have a large amount of that in the budget. But the big chunk is special education. Any other questions? The next line item is the consulting expense for ExEd. We don't bake it into the consultants. We've made an extra object code so everyone could always see. And we are proposing a COLA increase from last year to this year, which is for board consideration. It's not final, and it's absolutely negotiable.
As I mentioned already.
As Frank has always pointed out to me. So that's something that will come to the board's consideration before the end of June. Any questions there? Next item is non-instructional software subscriptions. Your big cost here is your student information system. It's PowerSchool. Nothing else really comes to mind other than PowerSchool right now. But I do, Biggi, I do believe you have a couple of other subscriptions. But this is typically, we're not anticipating that much of a difference. We are trying to keep this cost lower from in the new year, but I don't have any comments on this line item. As far as other fees go, one of your big expenses is visa expenses for your German teachers.
This is other fees and bank fees.
Other fees and bank fees.
So we're not paying the bank $27,000 to do our bank accounts.
Oh, no, there are other fees.
Visa fees in there for
Yeah.
our abroad students. Teachers, sorry.
Then we have fundraising costs, assumed at a level of $40,000.
Which is consistent?
This is
Very
consistent.
consistent over the years.
So these are the costs to for your gala. These are the costs of any fundraising activity when you purchase, water for a jogathon or shirts or something. Anything that is a spend towards your fundraising goes here. And then as far as communication goes, this is your internet expense, telephone expense, postage expense. We're anticipating similar level for next year, slightly higher, but no big movement.
Right.
That's it.
And then what's the other one? The other two?
There's a big one. So in the 7,000 series, this is money that goes to LAUSD. So LAUSD charges you an oversight fee, and LAUSD also charges you $294,000 in order to be a part of their special education program.
So was that, so this was just to show again the sensitivity of the budget. There was no judgment passed. It is a collaboration of a couple of things. Doesn't make any statement about these things. Are there any, about any position? Are there any further questions? If not, I'm going to ask the public to comment.
I don't know.
That would be the public to give comments.
My name is John Castillo, and my comment would be, my suggestions would be for Girder. I don't know I know other schools, other charter schools have a lot of funding. I wonder if any within the Girder staff has met with other charter schools. Because other charter schools have a lot of grant writing, they bring a lot of money in. My suggestion is for somebody within Girder staff to go and interview other charter schools and see if we can get a grant writer or get other funds incoming from the federal state capacity. Also, I was looking also at your notes here that also there's a possibility of structure change on the Girder structure. And I would also go outside, concerning the organization chart, it says leadership structure to be determined. I think that's very important because the leadership might have to change and be flexible. And I would also recommend for somebody within the board or staff or somebody to seek consultation as how to bring more funds that are positive in that regard. Also, another recommendation I have is, I haven't studied, I'm new to this, so I didn't know we have that many expenses. So I would also reach to the community, the students that participate here, how expensive it is that I thought that you didn't have to pay LA Unified District for renting this space. I think you should make the parents aware of this fact. I was completely not aware of that. And how the expenses, and I think you should be aware to the parents to this fact. And that's my two recommendations that I recommend. If I can help any way, I'd be more than happy to reach to Ocean Charter or other schools and see what is their paradigm, how do they bring funds, and how can they function in a dynamic way. And I don't know that the leadership quality, being in the military, we always look, when we were organized, we always look at our leadership. How is the team cohesive, and how does the paradigm changes? Because things change, and you have to live, we live in a competitive society, and how do we change the paradigm so we can reach our goals, and the leadership to be really in tune and a team player. So that's my recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Other public comments, and if so, please speak in relationship to the school.
Yeah.
Oh.
Phoenix, Autumn, Luke's dad, they're great. Preliminarily, I just want to point out that according to the agenda, public comments are supposed to be taken prior to your discussion. I understand you had a very busy meeting and you needed to get everything covered. But as far as I know, this is the first time public comment has been reserved to the end. More importantly, I've talked to a number of the parents. They are concerned, very concerned about the financial situation. Without the federal mandate block funds, our deficit is 230 some odd thousand. Next year's budget assumes an almost doubling of that federal mandate block budget, from 68,000 to 127,000. Without that, we would actually be in the hole. You know, if there is no federal block fund next year, we're going to be in the hole another $120,000. So we have $1 million reserve. You know, that's a 5-year runway, and I think a lot of Mr. Castillo did a great job talking about leadership. The two most senior members of the board, or on the parent side, are stepping down. That's my understanding. Lucio and Michael.
That's not true.
That's not true. You're staying on board. Okay, that's very.
Well,
good
we're gonna submit our names for reelection. We have to get reelected.
Okay, that's good to know. As a parent, I'm worried that we don't have an executive director in place. I think I speak for a lot of parents, who are floored by the fact that there's no interim director, that we had a whole year here, and that we're this late in the process, and our existing executive director will be leaving in less than 4 weeks. For many parents, I think that's a shocking situation to be in. And I've spoken to 3 families who have told me that because of that issue and because of the financial deficit issue, they won't be coming back this fall. So I think Lucio's comment about 390 is a very good one. I think that 406 is a unlikely scenario in my heartfelt opinion. I think based on historical averages, we'll probably see 5 to 10% attrition, and I think these numbers should be closer to 390 as opposed to 406. You know, this is a very different situation from first grade, when my son was in first grade, when we had 450 plus students, and you know, the deterioration in the attendance, you know, is due to a number of factors. I don't think there's any single factor, but it's a serious situation. And I think what's really problematic for many parents is the fact that all this is happening while Gwenis is leaving, and there will not be someone in her place.
Well, actually, you know, we started the search a couple of weeks ago, and we already have several very qualified candidates, and we expect by the end of this month to have someone in as an interim.
Okay, that's the first I've heard that. I'm glad to hear that there are people in the pipeline. Several weeks ago is better than nothing. It'd be nice to know that there was someone shadowing her who was vetted, and you know. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. The last comments I want to make are regarding the budget. I mentioned the mandate block grant assumption, which I think is a big jump, 100% increase in federal funds. The other thing I want to point out as a concerned parent, and I think I speak for a lot of parents, is that the field trips are valuable. Seeing a reduction from 15 to 10,000, it's one of the most treasured aspects of the children's program here. And I think, you know, I personally think that should not be cut as much as 33%. I don't understand why the rent increase is as substantial as it is, from you know, almost 25%, $44,000. And if that's LAUSD, then so be it. But it seems like a huge spike in rent per square foot. The instructional consultants, you know, we're decreasing 25,000 there. I'm worried about that. I think I'm also concerned about the instructional aid salary increase, which is by another 20,000 on top of the decreases last year, which were substantial. And, you know, classifieds, there's no supervision after school. Nobody mentioned this during the meeting. Item 2900, we're seeing 13,768 go to 0. So does that mean that the after-school supervision is being done away with? And I'd appreciate some clarity on that.
Which one is it?
2900.
Those are examples, that's not what that is. That, it could be
Well, but
supervision.
it's in the budget. We're assuming that it goes to 0.
But what do you think that is?
It was 13,768 before.
No, but you're saying that it's tied to after school. why you would assume that because it says after school there, but those are just examples of what the state says that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Supervision after
Yeah, so
school.
that, I just wanted to, and sorry to interrupt, I just wanted to point that out, that's not tied to after school. So when the state.
It's what it says in the parentheses.
That's the state account code structure, and it has that as an example. Those aren't our words, that's how it comes from the state account code. So those are eligible positions that go to that category, but that's not an after-school provider position by any means. So
Okay.
don't think that
Don't assume that, even though
supervision
it's in
associated with
parentheses.
after school is going.
I won't, that is helpful.
Yeah.
So again, these clarifications are helpful. I'll just reiterate as a conclusion that my biggest concern is the executive director position. The fact that we're so close to the end of the year without someone in place. So I really do hope that that gets addressed
Yeah, it is.
successfully.
So, thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Other comments? We have two more members of the public.
I guess I can just add a little bit. My name is Wendy. I think what he said is true. Like a lot of the parents, I mean, this is my first year, but I know a lot of the parents are not happy. I think a lot of the things
They are
is
what, happy or
not happy. And a couple of kindergarten parents are not coming back as well. And I think a lot of it is because there's a lot of like miscommunication. Like we didn't know anything about the interim position, being filled or having a, like somebody
It
that.
was voted on at the last board meeting, and the announcement was made.
Yeah. Well, I just think like there is like no direct communication with the parents. There's a lot of Facebook, but not everybody uses Facebook. Like I just think the communication between the parent administration and the board meeting. I know the board, the GPA does a lot of communicating and trying to talk, but there's a lot of people that are being left out. Like Hispanic communities, I know like a lot of parents don't speak English, and they can communicate with the school, kind of deal, right? Also, I think that we need to like focus on that, like kind of retention, because all these other schools, all the charter schools like Ocean, which they have so many people on the wait list, but our school that has all these extracurriculum classes, we have all this German, it's not getting that attention. So, there's something that we have to do on that. And, affects directly the financial aspect of it, because we are losing so many kids and good parents that, provide for the school. I guess that's pretty much it. And, I think you guys pointed out a really good thing about like all these coordinators that, maybe we can save some money in the budget there, like maybe consolidating a lot of the positions, because from what they were saying, all the positions just kind of interlocked with each other. But there might be, an opportunity to maybe give a person half of the duties of the other person, kind of deal. Again, and also reach out to the parents. I see a lot of the parents that have like, financial background, or they have IT background, and I'm sure that they're willing to do it. But again, I know they're trying to reach out, but I think we have to find a better way to reach out to parents and use those resources that we have in the community instead of having to pay outsources. Just an idea.
Okay. There's another parent you want to say?
Well,
If
I
you-
mean,
if-
guess
If you please state your name.
Laura Roberts. I'm a third grade parent, and along the lines of what I guess both of these parents are saying, I mean, we have a very passionate community here, and I can speak for myself as well as many other people that really love this school and want to see it grow and become even more successful. But I mean, myself, I've been here for 4 years. I remember Biggi actually conducted our tour, and we were so enthralled to be admitted. But every year, it seems that I personally don't see advancement or progress with the school. I actually see devolving in the school. And, you know, when we started here in TK, we were, you know, promised that a middle school was in the works. And 4 years later, I don't see that going anywhere. And, you know, the thing with the budget, I know there's many people working very hard on this budget, so I don't want to trivialize anybody's hard work on this, but, you know, to hear what kind of a deficit we are in, and then looking over this budget, I really don't see what the solution is. And then to think that we want to now add a middle school into all of that too, I mean, I don't know, it just doesn't leave me with a lot of hope right now, I guess we could say, but I want to keep hoping and, you know, trying, and, you know, I love this school and this community. So, you know, I don't really know what the answer is, but, I mean, it makes me sad to hear even kindergarten families are leaving. I mean, that's not normal, I don't think. I mean, I know some upper families have left due to different issues that have arisen in the school, but, you know, definitely there's a problem that needs to be addressed, because without the parents' passion, and I feel the passion waning year to year, then the school's really gonna be lost. So that's my only comment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd just like to make a short comment. I think very important is the leadership. It's the leadership, the vision, and what the leadership is the board members. The leadership can break or make the team. So I think it's very important for you to get a good principal and be under 100% under that. I think it's very, very important to bring the right leadership into and explain your vision and get the team under your wing. That's my suggestion.
Totally agree. I think a lot of people were really hopeful when Barkley came on board, and I know he was polarizing in certain ways, but I think a lot of people were also very hopeful that, oh no, we have a strong leader to like bring us into the future, and he wasn't even here a year. You know, that was a blow, like, to everyone's, I mean, a lot of people's anyway, like, kind of dashed our hopes. You know, that was not a good thing for the morale of our community, for sure.
Good, thank you. I mean, there's more time for public comment. No, we usually don't engage in discussion.
Speak as a member of the public.
You can speak as a member of the public.
So I like what Mr. Castillo has said, and I just wanted to also give a little bit more context because he had a very great idea to consult with Ocean Charter or similar charters in the area, and he also had a very great idea to engage a grant writer and encourage the school to seek other funds. And I think that those are great ideas. But I did want to also just point out a couple of things with that. A lot of the grants that are out there are going to schools that have very high free and reduced populations. So already there is a slight disadvantage for this school who who doesn't have a high population of free and reduced students. So
But we do have the ID going for us. We're very unique in that way, and also the languages.
yeah, but I'm just saying when you go to schools who get those big like $100,000 grants or $50,000 grants, those typically come from like the Waltons or like the with the big like Reardon and other big donors. I just wanted to state that one of the criteria is the free and reduced population. So I think that it's good to pursue that, and engaging somebody who's an expert in the field would be a great idea. But I did want to just point out that it's hard.
Ocean Charter has like $25 million to build their school, and there's probably 0 kids that have reduced lunch.
Where do you think they got their money?
Probably grants.
Okay.
I mean,
Ocean Charter is a client of ours too. I don't think they got $25 million in grants.
Well, not all 25, but they got a lot of grants. And
Yeah, so you can reach out to them, but it's not apples to apples. And when you talk about how they structure their program, please remember that you also have 2 teachers in a classroom, whereas they only have 1. So there's a lot of other hurdles, and I just wanted to let people know that, because it's not the same thing when we're dealing with this school.
Okay, we have 30 minutes of public comment, please go ahead.
Okay, just to build on what Ryan was saying, this isn't a new idea. When first grade, 2 years ago, they were talking about a grant proposal writer. Andrea Martin and a number of other people were talking about the gala and the fundraiser issue. It's been discussed before. It's just a matter of making it happen, I guess, and for whatever reason, it hasn't happened. So, I mean, I think it's a good idea if someone can figure out how to create a position, whether it's a paid position or a non-paid position. But I remember attending board meetings where this was actively discussed during the board meeting, particularly with respect to the middle school and the expansion that has been debated and advocated for the last 7 years intensely. I want to build on an earlier comment Mr. Castillo again mentioned about leadership and communication. One of the missing things from the last couple of GPA meetings was the last 2 that I went to, that there was no board member there. And last year, there was a point to try to have a board member present at the coffee chats and at the GPA meetings. I'm not criticizing the board or any specific member, certainly, but I think a lot of parents are wondering what's going on, and communication flows, particularly now that, you know, our GPA president passed away, have been somewhat minimal. Not everybody's on Facebook, as one of the parents pointed out. A large number of parents are coming from disadvantaged English as a second language communities, and they're not hearing. They're not aware of what's going on, except by word of mouth stuff. So if the parents here weren't aware that there was an ED in the pipeline, and I guarantee you 95%, 90% of the parents at the school have no idea. You know, these are some of the most actively involved parents here tonight. So there's a real need for the board to proactively have some sort of communication vehicle, whether it's the GPA or something else, that's much more detailed and much more proactive. Because otherwise, parents are operating in a vacuum and assuming the worst.
Right. So thank you for your comment. If there are any more budget comments.
Well,
We are still good for another 10 minutes.
again, we had the same problem with our leadership. Again, we have to have a leadership, a person in charge that's committed to that vision, and he knows, he's surrounded by a team that knows what to do. And if that person doesn't function, then he is somewhere not part of that team. So there has to be a very committed leader that knows how to guide and be committed to that vision. And it's very important, in the military, it's very important to have the right leader. If he doesn't, then the proposal or the protocol is not implemented. So he has to be a very person that's very committed to that, and then the community supports them. So again, it's back to leadership. I think that's the problem, and the leadership has to make sure that he communicates to the Hispanic community or to other communities, because I wasn't aware about this at all until 2 days ago. So I think that the most important is to look at your leadership and the qualities of that person.
Thank you. Any other comments?
One question
Question?
for Gwenis. Gwenis, I saw
allow it. Okay.
I'm not sure I did.
One fantastic piece of news was that all the teachers seem to be returning in the fall, per the press release that went out, which based on previous years, we had a 40% sort of non-coming back rate. So I'm just wondering, is that really the case, that all the teachers will be coming back in the fall? And how was that information obtained? You could clarify that?
Well, that because it is an at-will contract, they do have the ability to change their minds between now and the start of school. We hope that is not the case. So the majority of the teachers as of this date are returning. But having said that, that's open to change. Things may come along during the summer, things happen, circumstances change.
How do we know that they're returning? We just ask them, are you coming back in the fall?
Well, they have signed a contract, but it is an at-will contract, so it can be broken by either side. And we just hope they're of their word.
Okay.
That's all we can hope for. If they say they're coming back, they're coming back.
Good, so, oh, it's my iPad. So, as a takeaway, I would like to thank the public. The purpose of this meeting was not to pass judgment. It was just to disseminate information to the public. I'd like to thank the public for their comment. The charge to the leadership team now is to do a budget at 390, 410, and 425. And to present at the next board meeting on May 21st. 21st is a Monday.
Yes.
Oh, you're right.
May 21st in collaboration with ExEd. The Finance Committee issues the recommendations that they develop a budget at this point. The Finance Committee at this point, I don't think it's just a discussion. We're not at the point to issue a recommendation. Lucio, would you agree?
No, we're far from it.
Far from it, but this was an important meeting so that everybody gets to know this, right?
Yep.
And so the purpose of the meeting was met. The leadership team is charged in collaboration with ExEd, and that is the takeaway of this meeting. With that, do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
I second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned at 5:30.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.